just real quick, my name's Tim Fryfogle. I'm an engineer in the Engineering and System Performance Group. I work with Johnny Guest and other fine department members of the department going forward. So next slide, please. So what you're going to see is two different types of analysis, but with regards to the two different types, what's great is that both types of analysis lead to the same conclusion. So that is a great way to provide some verification and validation with regards to the end result, which is, I'm going to speak about in the next couple of slides. But just to kind of walk you through what's going to happen is reliability first, RF and NERC use the same load and resource data gathered through the reliability assessment subgroup, which is a NERC subcommittee group. We do publish our results in our monthly newsletter, and it will be posted. It's already posted on our public website as well. What's different between the two different types of analysis is the way we use the GADS data. We actually take historical GADS data through a 5-year rolling period, December through February. And just to give you a little bit of context, that kind of equals to like 452 data points. So, we just take those very narrowed months, mainly to focus in on the cold weather, and we were able to analyze that data. We take daily outages, and you'll see in the next couple of charts, you'll see that there's a line graph, and it's a curve of how those outages stack up with regards to our analysis that we perform on the GADS data. Where it's different, and where the difference is that NERC just pulls the assessment areas going forwards. They just request the data. They ask the assessment area to provide the data for them. They look through December, February as well. And they only look at 3 years worth of data. So it's a great analysis. It's a great way for verification and validation going forward. Next slide. So high-level overview. This is in the NERC WRA. Both MISO and PJM, which is our two assessment areas, we're keenly focused in on here. Reliability first are considered normal risk. MISO implemented a seasonal resource adequacy construct in the last couple of years, and it helped to improve its risk rating from an elevated in 2024 and 2025 down to a normal in 25-26 for this year going forward. For PJM, it has doubled the resources it needs to withstand the largest projected resources. And last year, they were a little bit of a unique situation in that they had an issue with the Transco regional energy access pipeline that has been since resolved, which then downgraded them from I wouldn't say it's above an elevated risk, but it was a unique risk because that had some pending legislation at FERC. It's been since resolved, so they've been downgraded to a normal risk going forward for this year coming up. Next slide. So high-level overview. Again, the capacity resources and the net internal demand are similar for both sets of analysis, which you'll see later in slides. Really what you're looking forward is the planning reserve margin, the 2 bolded or the 4 bolded in the 2 tables. As long as you're above a reserve margin requirements, for PJM it's 17.7, and for MISO it's 38.6. As long as you're above that, for PJM it's 35.6 and MISO is 49.7. You are considered a normal risk going forward. And since we've deemed PJM and MISO as having a normal risk, reliability first is normal risk as well going forward. Next slide, please. So here is the reliability first analysis. Again, this is that GADS data that we use, the 5-year rolling average, December through February. And what you're seeing here is basically half of a bell curve going forward. But what you're seeing is, and it kind of goes with intuition, there is always some outages on the system. And that's why you're seeing, at 5,000 megawatts, which is the typical outages total for those 453 data points. That amount has always been about a little bit between 90 and 100% of the time. There's that many outages. So as you work yourself from left to right, as the outages increase, the likelihood or the amount of times we saw that amount of outages decreases in probability going forward. So it makes sense that you're not going to see 25,000 megawatt outages typically in the PJM system going forward. So that's why it's under 10% chance of likelihood that it occurred. And what you have the two yellow dots there for is if you take the resources and minus the load, you're going to have a value there, hopefully a positive value. And what you're seeing there is that the 90-10 load, that difference between the resources and demand load is really at the low end of the total outages going forward. And then the 50-50 is even less likelihood of happening. So that's why we, with our independent analysis using the GADS data, have deemed PJM a low risk going forward as well. Slide. Exact same analysis, slight variation in that MISO does have maintenance outages that they do account for on the system. That's why that little bit of a black line to start off there. But the exact same analysis going forward, you have your outages that range from 0 to 40,000 across the x-axis and the probability on the y. Same analysis for the 90-10 and 50-50. What you're seeing there at the 90-10, which is an extreme load, it only happened, the likelihood of it happening only 10% based on that bell curve that PJM and MISO project for all their forecasting load. And the tails of that, you're seeing that there's roughly very low probability, roughly 3% probability of that possibly happening forward. So with the analysis that we performed for MISO, it is in line with what NERC is also projecting as well. So we project them as having a normal risk going forward. Next slide, please. So now we're going to shift on to the NERC WRA. Same order, PJM and MISO. So what you're going to see here is off to the right, you're going to see the resources compared to last year, just to kind of give you some sort of ballpark of where the numbers are lying. The reserve margin requirement, which is that black line going forward, is identical to what it was in 24-25. So the decrease in the reserves, so the dark blue and the light blue for both 2024 and 2025, you see there's a slight decrease in the amount of resources available. And that's just due to increased load and retirement of generation without the help of non-solar dispatchable replacement generation, basically saying, you just can't get the same amount of megawatts on the system from a solar or wind plant as you could in a conventional coal or natural gas plant. So there's some values, ELCC values and things like that, that account for lower resources from one year over to the next. Across the bottom, thank you, Brian. Off the left, you have the anticipated resources, so the 182.8. Now you start working your way from the right, you start subtracting. So typical forced outages, you have the negative 14.5 gigawatts. That's a subtraction from the resources. And then the hash mark is, as I mentioned, the 90-10 scenario that you do. That's called an extreme conditions. That's why it's hashed. We only account for those numbers only if we want to look at the extreme load. We account for both of those, and we have operational mitigations as well. That's green, that's positive. So as long as none of those lines, either in the solid orange line of the peak demand or the hash mark, which is the 90-10 forecast, as long as none of those lines intersect, PJM is deemed as a normal risk going forward. Next slide. Similar analysis for MISO, a little bit closer, but still above the chance of them encountering some issues going forward. There has been some risks identified, so reliability is expected to be maintained. So we often see MISO call on the load modifying resource. They have to call on certain alerts to free up megawatts, and they have to call on those alerts before they do call on those megawatts. So a little bit tighter, but still the lines do not cross each other. Similar analysis on the right with the two different black bars. One's for 25-26 is decreasing lower, and that's across the bottom of the slide. I kind of explained that a little bit better. So what they're doing is they're doing LOLE study improvements. What they're doing is specifically the outages driven by extreme cold temperatures. So what they're doing is they're doing a better correlation of when in the past, when they start building their load forecasts, when they start to see extreme outages, they're starting to correlate that with the high or the cold temperatures, and pulling that forecast going forward. We're starting to see that that is creating better methodology, better refinement, and it's decreasing the reserve margin requirement going forward compared from one year to the next. And that's a good sign, better improvement, better visibility. So that's the decrease of the black line. And then in the center of the graph here, same analysis going forward, resources on the left, start subtracting with the solid red on the right. And then the hash marks again are the extreme conditions going forward. And the furthest one on the right is the 50-50, the normal, the expected load, and then that 90-10, that extreme load of the hash marks going above, going forward. So similar analysis going forward. Next slide, please. So on top of gas data, load, and resource data, we also look at different types of fuels and the possible conditions that might cause some outages going forward. So NERC has taken on this graph going forward to try to explain what type of single fuel natural gas generation is available in each of the assessment areas going forward. And I have highlighted the two red boxes as PJM and MISO. What you're seeing there is roughly 63.9 gigawatts of single fuel. So these are no dual fuel, no backup generation, nothing like that. 63.9 gigawatts of capacity is in MISO, which equals about 38% of their total resource mix. PJM is a little bit lower, it's 60.9 and 23%. What this is saying is, if there was a catastrophic failure where all the gas pipelines do encounter some issues, this is some of the fuel that could be affected, but that does not account for any fuel, any other generation that is online, that is not in the markets, that could definitely make up this megawatts going forward. It's just a statement saying, these are some of the generations that we have to are vulnerable for a pipeline going forward, that are tied to a pipeline and doesn't have any backup fuel going forward. Next slide. So here, a quick summary of what we talked about here already. PJM and MISO are both in normal risk going forward during the extreme for the 50-50 and the 90-10 going forward, based on the random generator outage risk analysis, both for the reliability first analysis and the NERC analysis going forward. So normal risk going forward. Let's hope that the system the system will manage itself going forward. Next slide, please. So there's my contact information. If you think about any other questions that might come up later on, please feel free to send me an email. But I'll open up the floor for Brian to see if there's any questions that I could possibly answer.
No, thank you, Tim. Thank you for the very informative presentation. If you haven't seen it yet, please sign up to get our newsletter, because in our last newsletter, it's First Things Reliability First, there was a story on this, or a newsletter article on this. We used our new shorthand, and it kind of walks you through a lot of these slides, a lot of this explanation. So if there was something that you saw today in today's presentation, you want to go back and show your planners, you want to go back and talk to operations about it, all this information is not only on the slide deck from today's Tech Talk, but it's also in our newsletter article. And Tim did a real nice job working with Gabe on that newsletter article as well. Real quick, Tim, just before we get into the questions, and there were a couple that came in, just for the people in our audience that are maybe kind of new to this, you mentioned some of the acronyms like ELCC and LOLE. Real quick, just at a very high level, when you're talking about ELCC, what is it and how does it impact these numbers?
Absolutely, and thank you, Brian, for making sure that I do define this very well. So, so both PJM and MISO have a market, a capacity market. And then, of course, solar and wind plants have a megawatt value that they can produce on ideal considerations during the peak conditions going forward. So what ELCC does is a value that derates that megawatt value, the capacity that it can produce into a market type situation. So it can be accredited properly in both PJM and MISO. For ELCC, for PJM and MISO, it's definitely under the 30% range going forward. So whatever it can produce, we derate it down to 30% because that's a proper way to accredit them in the PJM and MISO market going forward. You mentioned LOLE, which is across the bottom. I apologize. So both PJM and MISO annually perform an analysis that calculates their reserve margin level. What they do is they use analysis to create an LOLE, which is a 1 day in 10 analysis going forward. They use historical data, and then they project a forecasted megawatt load going forward, and it creates a bell curve. And then using that bell curve, when I mentioned 50-50, it's in the center of the bell curve. It's the middle value of the bell curve. That 90-10 is the tail of it. It's in the 10th percentile. So LOLE study is just a way for PJM and MISO to calculate the reserve margin requirement. It's using a 1 day in 10 analysis, and they use historical load to project forecasted load going forward. So thank you, Brian, for making me explain that so for the audience can understand it a little bit better.
Oh, you're welcome, and the audience appreciates it as well. The next question, I guess you got to put on your Nostradamus hat, because the question was, and I'll flip to this slide that's applicable for. I guess somebody's getting worried. They said, will we have enough natural gas supply available this winter? Or maybe you're going to suggest to our audience that we all just take cold showers from now on.
Yes, this slide was almost considered an extreme condition here. So it's just to highlight the fact of the amount of capacity on a single natural gas generation, single fuel natural gas generation. This would, if you think of the scenario where this would become effective, is if all the natural gas pipelines would shut down completely in PJM and MISO. I think we would have other issues considering heat and generation going forward. That this is a very extreme conditions, but this is just, I almost say it's like a sentence in a paragraph that just kind of highlights an area of concern, but it's not an issue there. And yes, there'll be plenty of natural gas going forward.
No, thank you. And this is something we've been looking at is, when demand exceeds production and we dip into storage. So looking at, the storage levels of these natural gas things, you could read about this in some of our winter reports about, we fill up this storage, during the summer and we dip into it during the winter. So really interesting things. I never really thought that deeply about natural gas dependencies, 20 years ago, but it is the topic.
No, and to build on that, EIA tracks that very consistently. They put out a report before the seasonal goes. It talks about how much storage, how much above normal the capacity in that storage is, and how long it took. So yes, EIA is also very aware, and you can get that off the EIA.gov website. Thank you, Brian.
If I had more practice at this, I used to do this all the time. I'd be able to pull up that chart real fast because I know exactly the chart you're talking about. It's really interesting. Maybe I'll see if I could get it during the break. All right, but I got to get on to these next questions because I promised I'd get the audience out of here by 3:30. So it's funny. The next question, they kind of answer it themselves, but we'll see what you say. And I guess today you're speaking for all of RF. It says, with this type of low/normal risk outlook, how should entities prepare? What actions does RF encourage entities to take ahead of the peak weeks? And they drop some suggestions: readiness checks, fuel surveys, demand response posture. So I guess the question, paraphrasing, is hey, if we're low risk, do we need to do anything, or what should we be doing?
Absolutely. I think all generator owners and operators should do their due diligence. Continue to work on your freeze protection. Please use our assist visits with regards to winterization visits. We have a great team that goes out and it will help you pinpoint any issues. We have a great way of best practices going forward. But please continue to do your due diligence because normal conditions is at 50-50. As we've seen in the last couple of weeks, at least up us in the northwest or northeast, we're seeing these polar vortexes. So those are extreme cold blasts, very short period of time. They are they could be 1 in 100 type issues going forward. Please just continue to do your due diligence. Please share best practices. We have a generator subcommittee group that can also help you with best practices. We can always share the slides as well. So continue to do what you're doing. We are continuously getting better, but I think that's because of outreach, everyone sharing great ideas and just thoughts on how to weather these cold winter storms going forward. It'll just take all of us to make it better.
Tim, I couldn't have said it better myself. No rest for the weary. We got to stay after it. So let's not pretend like everything's all right just because we're in normal risk. In Cleveland, it was brutal yesterday. I mean, absolutely brutal. I was trying to fill up my wife's tires in the car, and my hands were frozen. So yeah, keep doing those things. Keep doing those checks. Sign up for the winterization program. Join the generator subcommittee. All of those things, and obviously always stay compliant with all your applicable standards. All right, we got one more question, I think, and then we're going to move over to Mr. Tony Jablonski. I don't know if you ever heard of these things called data centers. The question is, with rapid load growth, example, data centers, how does the current winter outlook account for the uncertainty with load growth and also the development of generation or possibly the retirements? So that's the loaded question. It's the trifecta of the loads coming in, the new generators are coming in possibly, some generators are going to be retired. What's the outlook?
So on top of the seasonal summer and winter, NERC also produces an LTRA, which I highly encourage. It'll be published in late January. What we're seeing is, yes, this huge load growth, 3-4% in PJM going forward, huge amounts. So how we account for those is they have to meet certain criteria in the PJM and MISO's queue process to be able to enter in their load forecast going forward. We're all reading publications of huge astronomical load data centers, but if they're not in the PJM and MISO's queues, their load queues, they just can't be accounted for. And that's the same with generation. They have to meet certain thresholds to be able to account for. That gives us certainty that this load and generation will materialize. It kind of stops us from kind of chasing these sometimes crazy numbers. But again, once they start becoming more certain in both PJM and MISO's markets, they'll start to bubble up into the LTRA and the seasonals going forward, and we can start to perform an analysis going forward to make sure we can account for resources and load going forward. But I can say PJM's and MISO's queue are extremely heavy in solar generation. So I think they have a lot to study going forward, but PJM and MISO are doing a great job working through their queues.
Thank you, Tim. And next time we bring you on the program, we'll ask you about how do we make sure these load forecasts are accurate and that we're not double counting. We'll ask you all the hard questions. But yes. Check this out. Since you brought this up, this is on the EIA website. This is their weekly natural gas storage report. And we're not going to go through all these numbers, but what's interesting is if you follow the numbers, you dip into the storage, as you go through the cold winter months. Then the summer, you rebuild it back up to, a good supply, about, 4,000 billion cubic feet of natural gas. And then as you approach November and December, you start dipping into that storage a little bit when the production doesn't match. So they publish this every week. There's all sorts of charts and graphs like this. So if that's something you're interested in, it's all just for free on EIA.gov.
Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome. No, thank you. And we're going to move over to, oh, you know what? We got one more question before I let you go.
Okay.
So when's the LTRA coming out?
I'm not sure of the exact date. Late January for certain. They'll be pushed out through the NERC. Hopefully you're on the NERC's exploders going forward. It'll be published out. We're doing some significant changes. I don't want to get into the details, but late January, the LTRA should be pushed out for 25. The 25 LTRA going forward, looking at next 10 years.
Thank you, Tim. We'll be looking forward to that. And next time I see you, I got a candy cane for you. So.